In this module, we're going to start to look at the configuration of Windows 10. And so it's entitled Configuring Devices, the devices being the phones, the PCs, the tablets, anything that's running the Windows 10 operating system. However, the primary focus for us is going to be the personal computer. Okay? And so we're going to start here in this first section with just an overview of the configuration tools that you have. Some of them are old, some of them are new, and we want to make sure that we know which options we're going to have using these various tools. And we'll talk about just an overview of some of the common configuration options that you're going to have. Vast majority of these are going to be found in the Settings app in Windows 10. A user account is something that's going to be required for every user to log on to the system. It identifies them to the system. It allows them access to their own data, such as their documents and pictures and videos. But user accounts have changed somewhat because now we don't just have a local versus a domain. We have a local, we have a domain, we have an Azure AD type of account. All of these can be linked to Microsoft accounts. And so there's some differences in the way Windows 10 handles user accounts. Then we'll look at Control Panel. Control Panel has been around for as long as I can remember in Windows. It is the place that we go to configure just about anything. So where the Settings app stops in Windows 10, Control Panel is going to pick up with advanced configuration options. We'll then also look at the administrative tools. You can really go even beyond Control Panel with the various administrative tools that are available to you for local administration, as well as the server-based administration tools that we might be using in an enterprise environment. And Windows 10 also has PowerShell, technically version PowerShell 5.0, and so we want to get at least somewhat familiar with how to use this command line interface. And so those represent all of the configuration tools that we are going to talk about in this module. Let's start with just an overview. Windows 10 provides configuration tools for virtually every user and every scenario. In other words, there are configuration tools that are designed to be somewhat simple. In the Settings app, that's for end users primarily, although IT professionals can certainly use them. And then there are administrative tools or configuration tools that are designed primarily for IT personnel. We don't generally have a user going and looking in Event Viewer. We don't have a user opening up Performance Monitor and adding counters to a data collector set to try to analyze why there's a slowdown on their system. That's generally not done, but it's done by IT professionals. So every user in every scenario. The Settings app is going to be continually enhanced, and that'll provide access to the most common configuration options that are required by end users. Control Panel will provide what's needed beyond that, some additional advanced configurations. But Control Panel still balances configuration with user friendliness. Okay? Because it categorizes things, it's got some common task laid out. It still has, it seems, the end user in mind. As you look at Control Panel, sometimes under a particular heading, like System and Security, for instance, you'll have a couple of common tasks, and they both take you to exactly the same place, but they're listed separately. Why? Because a user might be searching for that task, or they might be looking, and just perusing Control Panel and looking for that particular task. So it still is a balance there. You really, once you get to the Microsoft Management Console, then that's where you've reached kind of the top of the administrative tools. The Microsoft Management Console is an open framework into which we can add administrative snap-ins. And those snap-ins are individual administrative tools like Computer Management, Event Viewer, Performance Monitor, et cetera, et cetera. And you can use those to provide advanced configuration. All right? And then PowerShell provides us with command line administration for the IT professional. PowerShell is most certainly not for the end user. No command line interface is intended for your normal novice end user or even intermediate end user. So PowerShell is used to automate the handling of configuration tasks, usually in medium to larger sized environments. Some of the advanced administrative tools that you do want to be familiar with in Windows 10 are listed here, and we need to just kind of go through them. We're going to We'll see them here in a minute. We'll be somewhat brief because we'll talk a little bit more about them later. But computer management is still around. It's always been kind of the one-stop shop for managing the system. The reason I call it that is because it's an administrative tool that includes a number of other administrative tools. So within computer management, you have Event Viewer, Performance Monitor, Task Scheduler, the services applet, disk management, backup. You have all of these things within computer management. So you can get to computer management, and that can be the one location, kind of a launch pad to get into these other administrative tools if you want. Event Viewer is a look at the event logs on the system. And so it views those logs. We've got different types of events that show up in the logs, and it's a great place to go for troubleshooting. You want to know something that has something occurred recently on the system that might have caused a performance slowdown or the issue that the user is reporting. We go into Event Viewer and take a look. Performance Monitor is the most advanced performance monitor that we have in Windows. It's not the only one. Resource Monitor would be another one. Task Manager would be another one. But Performance Monitor allows you to add the particular things that you're looking at to monitor performance related to major subsystems like processor, memory, disk, and network, or to monitor performance related to applications, certain processes, or even just network connectivity. So you get very detailed and very particular with Performance Monitor. Resource Monitor gives you a lot of information, but it's kind of static information. You're not able to say, this is specifically what I want to look for, although you can filter. And then Task Manager is just kind of a good initial view of what's happening on the system and gives you some performance-related information, but it is like Resource Monitor, not really able to be changed. Disk Defragmenter, that is something that's running automatically, but we can manually do it. That will rearrange discontiguous chunks of data that are stored on the hard drive. That increases performance overall for the operating system, and it also increases performance for applications. Registry Editor is probably the most advanced administrative tool that there is. It's one that, generally speaking, we don't have to use a whole lot. There isn't going to be a shortcut to Registry Editor in the administrative tools. You're just going to have to open it up. Regedit from the command prompt or from PowerShell or from the Run menu. But that will get you into the hierarchical database in Windows 10 that is the registry. The registry has existed since Windows 95. It is the foundation of the Windows operating system, really. And all of the entries in the registry can be added to, can be deleted, can be modified. But it's pretty rare that you have to do that directly. Anything we do in the administrative tools is likely to be making registry changes. Anything we do in Control Panel is likely to be making registry changes. PowerShell can be used to make registry changes. So we often don't have to go into the editor, but it is there. The Windows Firewall with Advanced Security, that would be another important one. This represents the host-based firewall that's installed by default and configured to protect every Windows 10 system. We can go in and configure inbound rules, outbound rules, as well as IPsec integration. As I said, don't worry, we're going to go through all of these in much greater detail later because we got to know how to use these tools. The nice thing is if you're familiar with them on Windows XP or Windows 7, Windows Vista, even Windows 8, it's pretty much all consistent. A lot of this stuff doesn't change, but these are things that are focused on the exam and that you're expected as an IT professional to know. Device Manager would be a location where we would go to view the current devices that are installed on the system. We can also go there to update device drivers, to roll back device drivers if we've got a faulty driver that has been installed, to check hardware resources like memory addresses, and I/O address or IRQs and things like that. So a lot of that's not overly necessary in 99% of scenarios today. Device Manager has sort of decreased in importance over the years as Windows just includes more and more and more device drivers into the operating system. You start running into it on fewer occasions, okay? But it still exists. You can get to it from computer management or directly from the system properties, and so that's still a common configuration tool that we want to know about. All right, so let's take a brief look at these configuration tools. Actually, I'm not going to open up the Start menu that way. I'm going to right-click here, okay? Because when you right-click, you get what they're calling the Advanced Start menu, all right? So we've got PowerShell, we've got Computer Management, Device Manager, Event Viewer, Task Manager. You don't have everything that I talked about, but you do have the ability to get into everything that I had talked about. Okay, so for instance, Task Manager, if you're coming from Windows 7, you're probably a little taken aback at this view of Task Manager. If you're coming from Windows 8, then you know that they greatly simplified things. So basically, this is just showing me running task. I can click one and hit End Task. You know, if you want more details, though, you get a lot more details, and they do nicely kind of break things down into different processes. What are applications, what are background processes, and what are Windows processes, which is very helpful, and also the ability just to easily sort by you know, different types of consumption, memory consumption, disk utilization, CPU, whatnot. On the Performance tab, we do have performance settings for both memory and CPU, as well as disk and network. You've got some application history, you've got the applications that are set to run at startup, and you've got access to services here also. Okay? Again, I said we're going to be brief on some of these. Computer Management is the one location that includes multiple other utilities. Okay? So Event Viewer is here. You can get in and view, for instance, the system logs in Event Viewer, or the application log. Those would be the primary two. And we can see information events. That's telling us something happened that was good. We can see warning events. You know, in this case, some sort of network condition. We can see error events if there was a failure in some component or service or protocol. Same thing under application, okay? And so then you can double click on these and you're going to get a lot of information. And as I said, we'll go through more about that a little later in the course. But you also have access to performance in here, okay? So when I click on performance and performance monitor, I can view in real time. You know, I can add different things I want to look at. So all instances of the processor, you know, and I want to track all counters. And so it then starts tracking everything. Now that's way too much. A lot of that's not overly meaningful to me, you know, but I just did that so that you could see the real-time graph. You can do it in a different form. We can say we want it in a report form, you know, and then it sits there in cycles as opposed to showing me the graph. And we can also schedule that. Okay, so Performance Monitor is very beneficial. Disk Management, which we'll see a little bit later, is going to let me go in and manage the hard drives on the system. That's taken a minute to connect there, so we'll just, oh, there we go. Okay, so it's going to show me the hard drives on the system and allow me to manage those. Services, we can see the services. We can configure whether they're running, whether they start up automatically. We can disable services if that's something that's necessary, okay? So you have access to all of those in Computer Management, which means I don't necessarily have to get into some of these others. Let's go into Control Panel. It's a quick look at Control Panel. Some of the categories have changed slightly. Some of the common tasks would change slightly, but this is basically what you've got in the category view. You can switch to the non-category view. I used to do this. I think it was when XP came out. It was first time we had a category view, and it was just confusing. So I used to switch it. Now at this point, though, you've got so many options here. To me, it's almost easier just to go category view. And then in reality, if you can't find something, just search. You know, I have no idea. If I'm sitting here and I have no idea where BitLocker is, I'm just going to search for BitLocker. And it's going to pop up, and then as soon as I click on it, I can use this, you know, this breadcrumb navigation to see that it's in the system and security area. Okay, so it's pretty easy to find stuff. You don't even have to be in Control Panel. You can do that directly from the search. Okay, so system and security has the firewall and all your system options, file history backup, your BitLocker, storage spaces. It also has a link to all the administrative tools. So these are the administrative tools that I was talking about. We didn't mention every one of them. You know, Hyper-V Manager's in here because I installed Hyper-V. You got a local security policy, which is a part of the local group policy. You've got Resource Monitor would be listed here. And this is a look at Resource Monitor. This shows you a little bit more information about each of the subsystems, a step beyond what Task Manager is doing. The Windows Firewall with Advanced Security is here. It would show you the inbound and outbound rules that had been created for this machine. Okay, so all of those administrative tools are there, and those administrative tools can actually be listed in the Start menu under All Apps. Okay, under Windows, we've got Windows Administrative Tools, and you can expand it and see it that way too. You don't have to go through Control Panel. Okay? So, but jump around. You're going to want to try to get somewhat familiar with Control Panel, or you could take the route that I've taken for a long time, and that is I don't necessarily need to know exactly where everything is. It's very unlikely that on the exam they're going to ask you specifically where something is in Control Panel. That generally does not happen. I have to add that qualifier, but I've never seen that occur. So practically speaking, you don't need to know specifically where it is because you can search. Once you search and find it, if you want to note the location so that you can go back to it the next time, fine. But otherwise, it's not something that is overly necessary for you to do from a practical standpoint. So that's just a quick overview of the various configuration tools that you're going to have for different scenarios here in Windows 10.